I think we have a optimal amount of stress that actually leads to some level of contentness. I don't think it's happiness. I think that's the wrong way of looking at it. If we're trying to maximize for happiness, I think we're in problems. It's like contentness, I think, is a better way of looking at it. And it's a optimal amount, and the optimal amount is not zero. The optimal amount is definitely not too much, but it's just too much that what you think you can handle. And I think without...
Today's guest started out as a futures trader, young, ambitious, and ticking all the boxes of what success was supposed to look like. But 2 years in, the reality didn't match the dream. The job looked great from the outside, yet inside it felt empty. So he walked away, not into another spreadsheet, but into something much harder, rebuilding from the ground up. What followed was a slow, deliberate rediscovery of fitness, nutrition, and a fascination with what truly drives human behavior. Since then, he's built and rebuilt, walking away from high-ticket clients, investing 4K into his own growth, scaling a 7-figure business, and now teaching others how to do it with purpose. This is a story about reinvention, resilience, and knowing when to back yourself. Welcome to the podcast, Tim.
Welcome, man. What an intro.
Thank you. So let's start at the beginning. The first chapter, you got your dream job in the city of London, but it didn't quite go the way you'd hoped. Can you paint a picture of what that was like?
Yeah, I mean, we were just talking off camera. I was actually in Cheltenham University, and it was coming towards the end of my last year. And I'll be honest, I got given the job. My interview was, so do you want a job? Yeah. All right. That sounds good. Like, because it was there was two of them that employed me, and I knew one of them. He was like a really good friend of mine. So it wasn't like I worked really hard to get the job, but I guess when you're 23, and by the way, especially when you arrive in an arena like this, it's quite cutthroat, which most people would imagine. By the way, this was before 2008, so traders weren't necessarily the worst people in the world. They didn't just like destroy the whole world and the economy, but they weren't necessarily liked. But as well, it would be like a really good opportunity. So it's quite cutthroat when you arrive there. It's, I'd say, boring more than anything else. So like I got this opportunity. I didn't have to work that hard to get the job. I got the job, and it was just being thrown in front of a computer screen. I would say that I was writing this on the notes when I was thinking about what to write. Like, I would actually say that I'm quite happy that I wasn't very good at it, because there was a lot of young guys that were my age, 22, 23. Some of them, the guy who sat next to me, was called Junior. He was earning about 300 grand a year, which this was 20 years ago, remember. Obviously, I think if I'd been in that situation, I probably would have just ended up doing the job for a while. But you had a bunch of people that were maybe like 10 years older, and they were just, I wouldn't say scraping pie, but they were earning enough to not be able to leave. Like, it was like a comfortable complacency. And like, looking back now, I was like, I would have hated to have been one of those people. But because of the type of job it is, it's always like, you always think it's going to happen. It's like, I'm going to have this big breakthrough. It's going to happen soon. It's very addictive. I'll be honest, I wasn't particularly disciplined at the time. I was in London enjoying myself a little bit too much. I wasn't exactly like managed particularly well. I didn't have the discipline as much as some of the people that were there that were really good. And it was actually quite boring. But again, I was caught up in the anticipation as much as anything. I'd have days where you'd earn, like the first day I ever, now doesn't seem like it's crazy money, but back then, like the first day I ever made like 5 grand, it was like literally a 10-second trade. And I just shit myself, and I got up and I walked off, and I was like, I just didn't know. I phoned my mum, actually, to be honest. I was like, oh, I don't know what to do. I've just made 5 grand in 10 seconds. And it freaked her out a bit. But unfortunately, the downsides they tend not to like you losing money, and you tend to get sacked or asked to leave anyway. And so it's a bit like you went to football. Be the same thing, I guess. Like, there's a merry-go-round with like managers sometimes, that they always seem to get another job. That's definitely what it's like from where I left. Like, I could have just gone to another place and got the same job again, and you keep doing that. But I just, in the end, I was like, I can't. I didn't think I was good enough doing it, so I packed it in and left. Although I was invited to leave from that firm as well.
Yeah. And after you left that chapter behind, what came next for you?
To be honest, I was really unsure. Like, I didn't it was quite hard to find a job a little bit, but I think this was just my own excuses. Like I'd had a job in the city for 2 years and I'd get the same questions. Like when I went to another job, I didn't have like qualifications to do something. I did my degree in management, sort of economic management kind of thing. So it's not a job that gives you like you're a lawyer and then you go and become a lawyer. So I didn't really know what to do. I was just messing around, to be honest. I had crappy jobs. I went and lived in Spain for 4 months, thinking I was going to go and get a job there, and I didn't. I kind of just hung out by the pool for 4 months, and for I think it was about 2 years of just being a bit lost. I'll be honest. I was probably by that time about 25. Really unclear on what I was actually doing with myself. I remember I was in a job and the woman was just very confused why I was doing this work. She's like, she would say it to me. She was quite an old lady. She was very, very friendly. She just couldn't figure out, it was just a menial job. And she was like, should you not be doing something else? And then I don't know. As I say, I was kind of just a bit lost what to do. Then one day, someone, I'll be honest, someone who I knew walked into the job that I was doing, and it was one of the most embarrassing things ever. It was not good. I was working behind like a front desk, and I was like, this is a guy that had already started building his own business, and we had worked together like 5 years before, and it was just not, I was really embarrassed. Whether I should have been or not, I don't know. But literally that day, I went home and I booked to do, did you start as a PT, by the way, Ian? Yeah. So I went and booked PT level 3 massage, the whole big diploma with, who was it, with Premier. So like I had some money that I was saving. I was just like, right, I'm going to do it, put 4 grand down. I think I started that maybe 2, 3 weeks, 4 weeks after that moment. And that gave me some, to be honest, I never thought I'd make the sort of money that will build the business that I built. I just wanted to do something that I liked doing.
And do you remember what your first day as a personal trainer was like when you swapped the suit for the gym floor?
I do. I'll ask you what yours was like as well. I was quite lucky because one of the guys who I did my level 3 with sort of got me the introduction to the job. The job, by the way, we both know it wasn't a job. I just paid them rent to be in their in their gym. It was Fitness First. And he had told me exactly what happens on the first day. So I was ready for it. But I went there. They talked to me for about 45 minutes, gave me my uniform, and then were like, okay, there you go. That was it. Now, I was ready for it, and I think if I hadn't known, I'd have been like, I've said this on some emails that I wrote. Actually, after that 45 minutes, I went and hid in the toilets for about 20 minutes. I was like, I can't do this. Just didn't know what to do. Just talking to people. I had 8 hours, and then I was like, I just need to go and do it. So I don't know. Did you start in a normal gym, or was it like a
Yeah.
private?
Started in a Virgin Active. Yeah, went in for the interview. Yep, can you start? Yep, can. Okay, turn up. I think it took me a long time to get my uniform. They said, yeah, we got your uniform, but it was basically going to be like a little crop top, so it wouldn't fit me, or one that was like wearing my dad's suit. I did have an induction, though. One guy did take me around the whole gym and gave me an induction, like say, this is how this works, this is how this works, and then it's basically on the gym floor by yourself. And I think every personal trainer should experience that, because that's how Mrs. Jones walks into the gym for more than one day. Just because we're there for 8 hours or 16 hours a day, you get used to feeling that uncomfortableness. And I think you've always got to remember that when somebody comes in to start the gym who hasn't necessarily been in the gym environment, they feel that, but even probably more acutely than we did, because we've probably looked like we fit in a gym.
I mean, I'd never thought about it
So,
like that, but hell yes. And I would probably, if I was just a Doris walking into the gym, I'd have probably walked back out again and not come back. Uh,
yeah.
I just kind of sucked it up. Like I wasn't particularly good at. I guess I'd never needed to be good at that. There was never any practice. There was never any, reason to just start to go up and talk to people. I did find that I did eventually get it. I kind of, maybe it was because I was a bit older. Maybe it was because of the failure that I'd been through. I was quite hungry. Like I was, even from the beginning. I was staying longer in the gym. I wasn't just sitting there drinking lattes at reception. I would go and talk to people. I did kind of figure if someone's looking at the profile board, I should probably go up and speak to them. In fact, my first client that bought 3 sessions a week, which at the time, even though I'd had a decent job, didn't make loads of money from it, by the way. Like that felt like a real, like, so someone just gave me 400 quid or 450 or whatever. No, probably 400 for 10 sessions. And I was like, okay, this is good. Like that seemed, by the way, that seemed like a lot of money. Obviously later you realize that, you know, the gym steals half of it and then the government steals the rest and all of the other things. But I was like, okay, this can work. Like, I don't know if I was naturally good at sales, but I figured out ways of making sales for sure. And I was in Fitness First in Shepherd's Bush. And then I realized, like, actually, you know what? I can do this and I am going to do it. And I just realized I was in the wrong location. So within about a year, I'd applied for a job in the city in actually the gym I used to train in. And they gave me a job pretty easily. When I started in the other one, I'd do both. So it's a bit of travel. They didn't have a fitness manager in there. Like I paid my rent. I didn't get anything off them at all, but I didn't really care by this point. I didn't want anything. It's like I could do enough sessions on Monday morning to have covered my weekly rent. And then it was just pure profit. And I actually became one of the more successful trainers in that gym.
Bit of determination, a bit of resilience, and just go, right, I'm just going to do this and talk to people, isn't it? And what in those early days then, were there some funny moments that you still laugh about now as being a personal trainer?
I mean, me hiding in the toilets was quite amusing.
Yeah.
Like literally, I don't know. I say 25 minutes. I don't know if it was quite that long. I was like fight or flight. Like I was free. I was just like, and again, luckily I knew it. We used to have this little game. Interestingly enough, it will introduce my ex-business partner. We used to have this little game where we'd see the trainers come in and we'd all go like, how long are they going to stay for? And it's a bit like when they talk about it in prison. It's like, and I remember the two guys. One time I felt really sorry for this lady. She came in, she was quite old. She had like a checklist and a board, and she was walking around the gym. And I was like, oh my God, I feel so sorry for this lady. We didn't get any support from anyone, by the way. And she was gone within about 3 days. My business partner, who I didn't speak to for about a year, he turns up with this other guy who was proper Cockney geezer. I don't know, he must have had like 10 clients within about a week or two. And the guy that ended up being my business partner was just uncomfortable, awkward. It was uncomfortable just watching him trying to walk the floor. Obviously, little did I know we'd build a 7-figure business together, but it was that was quite amusing as well. Although hopefully he doesn't see this and that I'm laughing at him.
Yeah. Well, you're laughing with him, really, if you then chose
No, I definitely wasn't at the time. I definitely was laughing at him. I was like, and in fact, I said to the manager, the gym manager, I was like, what are you playing at? Like, why would you give him a job? It's a joke. And he said to me, goes, you watch. And he was right, I guess, in the end.
saw something. And from those early days of sort of trial and error and figuring things out, what felt meaningful, did you then start to design some processes or notice that just training the clients weren't getting the results and you sort of shifted some of your coaching into behavior? Is that sort of how it happened?
It's interesting when I'm marketing now, obviously I'm marketing to people that were in a similar situation to me, and even like use the word like processes and stuff like this. Like that wasn't how when I looked back, it wasn't how I envisaged what I was doing. Like even when people, like when I got my first business coach, they were like, you know, tell me about your business. And I was like, I'm a personal trainer. I didn't have that sort of conceptualization that this was a different thing than me just doing a job. Not a job. I liked doing what I did. I knew I was self-employed. I think the personal training industry is a million miles different than it was a decade and a half ago. The amount of like marketing help, sales help, coaching help, there was education, of course, and that's how we met. So there was definitely education, but the level of competence around business and sophistication is very different to what it was back then. I started reading a bit of personal development, partly because I just wanted to improve myself and my business. And I knew the business, just get more money, put it that way. And I started reading a bit of personal development, and I'd read books like Switch, which I like is, I think it's by Chip and Dan John. And then later on, Steve Peters' book, which is like the Chimp Brain. And these were like, I'm interested in them for me. And then I was like, okay, I can see how these are just so relevant to my clients. So like the Chimp Brain, have you read it?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Accessible that I think a 10-year-old could read it and understand it. Like it's that, but also impactful enough for an adult to actually get a lot out of it. And I was like, like, if this is me, which it was, I don't know if I was quite at the stage where I was like, maybe it explains why clients eat the donuts for breakfast when they tell me they want to lose weight. But it was as much around, okay, there is a little bit more to this. Like there is a bit more than just telling them what to do, giving them, because most of the time most clients didn't didn't follow my advice outside of the gym. And I think I don't know if you agree with this, but I would get what I now call false positives. I had a client called Reshma. She lost 6 dress sizes in about, I don't know, 6 months, 5 months, 7 months, whatever it was. And I just thought I was the bee's knees. I was like, I wasn't looking at all the people that didn't, by the way. And I think anyone would have got a result with her because her motivation from day one was just through the roof. Someone had just had a heart attack in her family and she was like really scared. So like I just had to make sure I didn't get in her way. What I became more interested in is not the clients that just did everything you said, because they're the easy ones. And by the way, I'd also dovetail in as I started charging more, maybe not necessarily in that gym, but when I started branching out of that gym and charging more, I did get more and more clients that had been to lots of other trainers. And I think that what people tend to do is they'll go cheap. And then when that doesn't work, only then do they have the need to go to someone who's a lot more expensive. So at first it was just a personal thing. And then I actually started using some of this stuff with clients. There was, do you know Dax Moy? Have you heard of him?
Yes. Yeah, I've heard of
Dax
him.
was
Yeah.
about, I never met him or anything, but Dax was about teaching, I think he would call it more like mindset stuff at the time. There's some guys I used to go and listen to, the Body Transformation Academy, a guy called Lazo. And I was really interested in what they would teach and learn. And around this time, I was kind of just learning more and more. And then I went and did a life coaching diploma, like a proper master's level life coaching diploma, like third of a master's. That's where I really got into it. And I was like, yeah, okay. But by the way, that was not anything to do with fitness. So I had to figure out how can I take the concepts I'm learning here and bring it into what I was doing with my clients. And so I guess it just started off, we went down the faster route. I'd add this in. I was really interested in the way the body moved, but I was terrible at it. Like really, I'd go to those faster events and there's probably people like you or whoever, and they'd all say what they can see. And I'd just be sitting there going, I can't see any of that. I really was lost. And I was like, I went to do the Grey Institute, spent a lot of money on their course, ended up stopping halfway through because I just couldn't, I don't know what it was. I just didn't get it. I didn't see what everyone else was seeing, and I certainly wasn't fixing anyone. But I think I realized, looking back, that I was interested in the new learning. I got a bit bored with being a personal trainer and it was just a bit unfulfilling. And so when it wasn't like, oh, I can't figure this out. But I think in hindsight, I realized when I started doing the mindset stuff and the psychology, I was actually quite good at it. Like, and obviously when you're good at something, you'd want to do more of it, whether you're aware of that. Looking back now, I was very good at it. I was good at the coaching stuff. Could start to read people maybe better than other people compared to the faster stuff where I was terrible.
But then that's, I suppose, as you say, the psychology element of reading somebody or body language reading them rather than anatomically reading them.
Yes.
And there's the difference, and not one approach is better or worse. But if you've had, say, the clients that were coming to you, high ticket, selling them in at, and they'd been to half a dozen Joe Blogs, random personal trainers, but you were able to get into their psyche, actually you're probably fixing them from the inside out and making them like that client you mentioned earlier on that was just like 6-7 months, dropped the dress sizes, dropped in that and became an easy client because she was motivated. And that actually is the thing, is what's it, 68 hours in a week, they see a personal trainer 2 hours a week. What do they do for the other 166 hours? You know, you can have all these stats, but what do they do? And talking of high ticket, you obviously made the bold move of walking away from those high ticket clients. What led to that decision?
It was when I was in fitness first, I went to see, and this was a long time ago, I went to see a woman called Lucy Johnson who ended up becoming quite a big name in the industry. But I saw her really early on, and you didn't have Facebook doing like, I'm doing this talk. Like someone who I knew that this was going on. So I went along with him. And it was just like 10 things you do in your fitness business, etc. And I was like, it definitely gave me a lot of like, okay, this is something that I can do. She said like charge monthly, for instance. She said a few other things, package things up, all of this kind of stuff. And I was like, this is interesting. I can start doing some of this. And then I get, again, it's more of a looking back. I realized that like what most people want to do is, well, I need to know how I'm going to do something before I do it. And I was in the situation where I was like, maybe I got a bit cocky and I was like, well, I left that thing and I was like, I want to charge the same amount of money for my personal training as the best personal trainers in London. When I say best, I mean probably most expensive. Now, if I take off some random people who I don't know who they are, I'm sure there was plenty of people that actually charged more at this point. I just looked at Bodyism and UP, and I looked at the top prices, and it was 125 for a session. And I was like, because I'd learned from Lucy to package it up, I was like, well, I want to charge 500 quid a week. So that's £2,000 a month. And at the time I was charging about 65 for a session. I didn't know how I was going to do it. I had no clue. I just made the decision that I was going to. I moved gym or got another gym in Belgravia. I was like, there's wealthy people in Belgravia. Not that there's not in the city, but it's just a different relationship with money. I needed to get better at sales. I needed to get better at sales. I definitely needed to improve my marketing. I also realized that I wanted to be as good as I could be with the actual like practitioner role of what I was doing, because if you're going to charge big money, you should be able to fulfill on that. So I found the gym. I just started spending more and more time there. I didn't have any of these really high paying clients. And one day I was walking to get lunch, and I wouldn't say out of the corner of my eye, but I saw this hairdresser's, and it was like, I don't know, an Aston Martin outside, or whatever else, a Ferrari, etc. And I was like, oh, there's rich people in there, there's wealthy people in there. And I was like, well, I'm going to go and get my hair cut. Booked to get a haircut, which was about £60, which I really do not pay to get my hair cut. £60. In fact, at the time, I think I was paying like a tenner, or maybe doing it myself. But I was like, you know what, this is worth the money to be in this space. And of course, you sit down, what do you do? And I made friends with a couple of the people in there. They actually were really nice. They agreed to let me put some flyers in there. But the key thing was that I created a very good relationship with one of the people who works in there. She came and done some free sessions with me. And then one day she's like, oh, I've got your client. You can charge whatever you want. He's quite wealthy. I was like, okay, cool. And then we got an introduction and practiced all the things I practiced. By the way, I think I was very good by this point. He was very happy with the work we did together. And I mean, very happy, because we stayed working together for a while. Pitched him. It was like £1,500 if you want to do 3 sessions a week, 2,000 if you want to do 4. And he was like, which one do you think I should do? And I'd learned some sales by this point. I was like, well, the people that want to get the best results in the quickest time will do 4. If you're a bit more patient, you can do 3. And he was like, I'll do 4. And I was like, okay. And then he paid me 12 grand, and I walked off and had 12 grand sitting in my bank when I looked at my banking app, and I was like, what the fuck just happened there? And that was like 2 years I wouldn't say 2 years of work, but so I got to a place where I didn't have loads of clients, by the way, but getting where I had a client base at that sort of price points maybe took about 2 years or so. And last client I signed was £12,000 for 4 months, which at the time was about $5,000 a month, for 16 weeks, which was a lot of money. It's probably more than most personal trainers make from all of their clients. But by this point, I wasn't trying to build a big client base. I just wanted a small select amount of clients to be able to focus on other things that I was wanting to do. And it got to a point where I met Glenn, my first coach. He inboxed me and sold me into what he eventually taught me how to do. And I signed up with him, and I started getting traction with the online relatively quickly. And I sort of moved up to selling enough in a leveraged enough model that my 2K a month client, the last one I had, started to seem like it wasn't the best value for me, because I actually did travel to him as well. In the end, I was like, the guys in the gym that I was in for, I was mental, because he would also pay me when he wasn't there. So it was just an ongoing monthly. So if he was away for a month, he'd still pay. Like, they couldn't get their heads around like someone paying that much. And then when I said I'm getting rid of him, they still couldn't believe that even. But I knew at that point, like, it was the in-person was going to hold me back. Now, I think now that for other people in other situations, and if I'd been a bit older, I would have kept hold of those clients and done online. At the time, I was a lot younger, and, I didn't have lots of commitments, and eventually ended up moving out of the UK anyway, so I couldn't have in-person business. So I do think that slightly changed. But for me, it was just like, right, this is going to get in my way. And then I got rid of it.
And what was that experience like, working with a coach, or your first coach? Were there sort of some inspiring moments, or some perhaps questionable sides of it from what you've learned now?
Loads of questionable sides. Seriously, so many. Did I overbuy in one of the years? Probably. Yeah, probably. I'd take responsibility for my own decisions. I'd been working with him for 18 months or 15 months. I knew the gig. He asked for 50K for the year of mentoring, quite close mentoring. That was in pounds. Would I say I got the best? Would I say I got full value from that? No, but I hold myself responsible for it. I didn't do the things he asked me to do. So, but I'm still more than happy. Yeah, in the moment, when I stopped working with him, I was like, "Oh, that was a lot," you know. But look what it did in eventually. That that was, you know, a great investment. So, I mean, there was definitely things that he asked me to do, which he was a bit. Not that he'll ever watch this. There was a lot of other people around who didn't have as great experience as me. So I do recognise that there was flaws to what he did, but I just made the most of it. And I think we were quite aligned. Like we were quite similar. We were we were we were both very interested in sales, marketing. He was actually a very good coach as well, like actually a very good coach. And I only recognised that after having two or three more coaches on how good he actually was, in the sense of actually asking you the right questions so you could even really figure out what the real problem is, as opposed to just answering what someone says. So I learned so much from him without maybe knowing that at the beginning. So questionable, and maybe it was a bit expensive at one point, but
But I
yeah.
suppose at that time there was a lots of other people coming around, and it was then a lot of the mentors or coaches at that point were all probably talking to each other and going, well, I can charge this, I'm going to be charging this, and it sort of snowball effects
It was
that
the Wild West
they
at
get,
one
isn't it,
point.
really?
It was definitely the Wild West at one point. Like I remember there was a bunch of people around at that point, and it was also the sort of rise of the Facebook group kind of stuff. And there was sort of, at one point, it was like just talk about, no names were mentioned. And then I remember, like, I don't know what made the shift then. And there was one person who got it a lot, by the way. Whether he deserved it or not, I don't know. It was like almost right now we're going to start naming names. And there was a couple of names that were named. And it seemed to be open season. Whether they deserved it or not, I don't know. Who knows? I think business is hard. Like I had this conversation with someone in an inbox the other day, and he said something about, oh, well, I want to find a coach who's willing to, I don't pay them until I make money. If they were that confident in what they do, they would do it. And he said, this is what I do with my clients. And I'm like, I was just having an honest conversation with him. And I'm like, yeah, business is hard. My business is hard. You might not make it work. It's not my responsibility if you don't. Not everyone does make a business work. In fact, most people in the big wide world, the business goes bankrupt within however many years. I think it's like 85% of businesses don't last more than 3 years. We're slightly inculcated to that because of being a personal trainer in the gym is a little bit easier. So I think it's just very hard. And a lot of people aren't built for it. Now, that doesn't mean that they weren't missold.
No. And I think that's very, very different, isn't it? That you can get, I suppose, sold into something, but actually you're not ready to take self-responsibility, to take actions. Because sometimes there are, even if you look back at, say, the personal trainers, most personal trainers didn't last longer than 90 days in most gyms. Because you think month one was normally free rent, but by the end of month one, you got to pay half rent or 3/4 rent. By the end of month two, for month three, you got to pay full rent. So if you haven't made it in that, you've got to get out. And I think the same, you've then got to spend a lot of time on the gym floor talking to people, build up stuff that's not the so glamorous stuff. And I think nowadays with, let's say, social media, it's very easy to go, well, they're doing all right. And they say it's X pounds to come and train with me or to join my business mentoring. And they're like, oh, wow, that's a bit a lot. Can I do it this way? Can I do it that way? Like, well, no, if you're in, you're in, or if you're out, you're out. There's sort of skin in the game, as they would say as well.
When I paid Glenn, I paid Glenn, sorry to interrupt, I paid Glenn a lot of money. And it was my first experience of actually, I remember distinctly going home one day and I was really tired and I was meant to have sent this email and I didn't send it. And I was lying in bed half asleep and I was like, oh shit, I meant to send that email. And I was like, my inner dialogue was like, I'll just send it tomorrow. And I was like, I think it's probably the first time I recognized really understanding my inner dialogue and going, actually, no. And I remember saying to myself, I was a bit frustrated with where I was. I was like 37 by this point, and I was doing all right, by the way. I mean, I had clients pay me stupid amount of money, but I still knew that I could do more. And I was a bit frustrated. I was like, if I'm in the same situation when I'm 40, I'm not happy. And part of the reason why I went into it with Glenn was partly because he was a good salesman and he would have got that out of me, but it was also real. And I was like, no, this is why you're where you are now, because my inner dialogue would have always been, I'll do it tomorrow, do it tomorrow. And I know when the do it tomorrow doesn't turn into even doing it tomorrow, it ends up you do it in 9 days. And by that point, it's like, I was like, no. And I got up and I sent the email. I was like, I needed to change things like that. I needed to change that inner dialogue. I needed to change the responsibility that I took, all of my actions. I needed guidance. I needed to sort my shit out, I guess, although I wasn't doing terribly. So the money that I spent with him was fantastic. Like, it was worth every single penny. And some of it was because I shit myself so much. If he had charged me 200 quid, I don't think I'd have got out of bed and sent that email. And it's just a metaphor more than anything else. So, I do see why people charge high ticket. I think there's pros and cons of it. And I
Yeah.
mean mentors, by the way.
Yeah. And around that time as well, you met your business partner, Phil, and built and scaled a business to what, 7 figures? What did you learn about sort of leadership, growth, or working at that sort of level?
We had met previously, by the way. We tried a business which was a boot camp franchise, and we tried to build that for maybe 2.5 years. All the money that we earned, which wasn't a lot, we put it back in. We were definitely trying to run before we could walk. We were trying to create a franchise, all of this stuff. We spent stupid money on stupid websites and PR, and we thought it was all going to work out. This was after 2 years of really it seemingly not getting anywhere. By the way, we didn't know anything about direct response marketing. We didn't run ads. We didn't do any of this stuff. Especially back then, you would have done it. Probably wouldn't do it now because of the cost, but back then it was easy to make that stuff work. But we didn't do that. We didn't know anything about that. And we got some PR in what was the News of the World magazine, which was going to be a full page spread on the first Sunday of January. And we were just like over the moon. We're like, we've cracked it. And then obviously it counts down, and we had products for sale on our website and all this. And then it came to, literally, I was expecting to like wake up at 6 a.m. and it was like ding, 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 ding. And I was like, what's going on with my phone? Like, is the ringer turned off, or like, is there Wi-Fi problems? Nothing. And I think we might have made like 3 sales of some products. This was in front of 4 million people. And it was quite hard to take, but like I walked in and I was like questioning. Phil was like, what are we going to do different? Now, we actually stopped working together on that business when I went, and that's one of the reasons I also went and worked with Glenn. We stayed in contact. We then started working again together. He did a bit of sort of marketing for me. And then we decided to just build a business together. What did I learn?
And what
Number
was
one
that
is
business you built together?
the second one,
Yeah.
the one that actually worked.
Yeah.
Institute of Fitness Behaviour Change. It's kind of it's a variation of what I do now. I've shifted a few things that are different now. It was, what did I learn? Pay yourself first, which is the notes that I said. We definitely made money, but you would probably learn next time to. There's actually a book called Pay Yourself First, which is we probably put growth too high. And we were new to this. So in hindsight, we wouldn't have thrown as much money as we did on growth. We grew too quickly. We brought too many staff on too quickly. We probably didn't give our team enough support. So when we built departments, we should have built one by one. We sort of all did it all at once. I wouldn't say expected, but we put someone in charge to then go and build that part. It was probably just everyone being slightly out of their, I mean, it's great, by the way, but I probably would have gone slower. I really enjoyed managing people, but we had a lot of people very quickly. And I don't think we were particularly good at recruitment. It's hard, very hard. And you have to learn, like we were very good at certain things. We were very, very good at sales. I basically did all the sales almost. We did build a team at one point, but we were very good at that. What we taught was very different. So the teaching of how to be a behavior change coach, how to understand the concepts, which marry, and I still hold this now, they marry incredibly well with online fitness. Personal training does not correlate to online. They're two different things. I actually don't think personal training is that great for what people think it's great for, which is a weight loss thing. It's not actually that good for that. Like, you'd be better off going to see a dietitian, maybe a nutritionist. So we did that very well. We had something that was original and really got a lot of people bought into it, whether they became clients or not. I think we had a real impact on the way people think about online, for sure. Because before we were doing that, Again, I said there was a few pockets, but most people when they went online were just like, this happened in Glenn's program. The reason I did quite well is because I was already doing that. And a lot of the other guys hadn't learned all the stuff I'd learned, and they were just trying to sell programs at 2K. And then when they got the clients, they had no clue what to do. They'd give them a workout program and a diet plan, and it didn't work, and it was a shit show, which is one of the flaws with Glenn's model.
Yeah, I suppose it's not in person, you learn a lot more. And then if you've got that knowledge of in person, you can translate into another sector or online. But if you're only going and thinking, I just do a program online, there's that missing bit, which is the coaching, the psychology, the touching base with Doris or whatever, making sure she's on board with change and stuff, isn't it, really?
Yeah, and I think that the personal training environment is not a very good environment for doing that stuff in. So even like originally it was like sort of things like stages of change or like DeMartini value stuff or like a grow model or all of these things I learned. It's hard to do it in the gym. And by the way, also when you sell someone personal training sessions, what they tend to do is hide behind that as the solution. Even if you give them this other stuff, what I was finding is that they weren't doing it. Now, some of my clients, which was interesting early on, one of them started getting really into it. She's like, can I pay you extra to do this, but separate? So we would go and do like an hour of coaching, like behavior change coaching, but we do it after our sessions. She took it on board, but others I'd try and get them to do it and they just wouldn't do it. And I'm like, I'm not surprised they didn't, because they weren't sold into it at the beginning. They didn't buy into it. And it's much harder because you actually have to look at your own patterns and why you eat like you do and question lots of things that you bought. Whereas when you go and buy a personal trainer, some clients buy a personal trainer because it's just like, not rent a friend, but I'd have clients that would say things like, well, I just wouldn't go to the gym if you weren't there waiting for me. It's like, it's not. And by the way, if they've got enough money to pay for that, why not? I don't think it's a problem, but I don't think it's great value. But then they would just be like, I just want to get out of the office for an hour. Like one of the clients I had, he would pay me $2,000 a month. He'd pay me about 1,000 a month for his son. And then if he rescheduled, he'd pay me some more. So he'd probably end up paying me about $3,000 a month or so, maybe a little bit. Maybe he'd pay me about 700 for his son. And so he'd pay me about $3,000 a month. And he probably used to come and train twice a week, maybe 3 times. Sometimes he wouldn't come for a month because he'd be away. He would lift weights. He would look at himself in the mirror and go like this because he liked doing bench press. And then he would just disappear and go back to his office. He's like, right, I'm good. Yeah. I was like, matey boy, look. And I tried to do some of this other stuff. He had no interest.
Yeah.
But that's not the normal sort of person. So I think that when you try and do some coaching with people in the sessions, it's not a good environment. I like hybrids for that reason, that you can do a bit of both. But I think people hide behind personal training. They make themselves feel better, like they're trying to do something about it. When you actually sit down with someone and help them realize like why they're behaving like they are, it's actually quite hard sometimes for the person to look at themselves.
And what was the sort of the defining moment when you were building that business that you thought we're actually building something here? Or obviously you had that explosion of growth. Was it then just too much to handle and you wanted to restart again and do a reset?
It wasn't that too much to handle. I think that it was the right time, right place for starters. So it would be disingenuous to say that there wasn't a spike in online income and success over COVID. We were set up in a very good place. We had a very good brand. We had a good differentiator. We had a couple of good people. And then COVID hit. And to be honest, we were like, shit, what the hell are we like? We didn't know what it was going to do for the business because we had started growing. We were doing okay, but we weren't. There was still just 3 of us, me and business partner, and then one other person. And then we soon realized that COVID was going to do a lot wonders for us. By the way, not only for us, for our clients as well, because obviously the whole world had to then start purchasing online fitness, which, by the way, I think people are paying for now because everyone had money to. I was in Malta, so my experience of COVID wasn't, I think, like a lot of people's. I already worked fully online. I was in Malta. It was still locked down, but it wasn't the worst thing in the world. There was a bit where you couldn't, but I could still go out. You couldn't go to the beach, but you could, all the things like this. And no one had anything to spend their money on, and they got all this free money from the government. And then they were like, well, I'm going to spend it on my fitness. And so there was a lot of money sloshing around. And I think what happened is, because a lot of people that were ill prepared for having an online business were either forced to start one or were like, here's a cash dash. a lot of sales were made and a lot of people were unhappy. And so I think that the marketplace as a whole became very suspicious. And I mean the end users, like fitness purchasers. So I think that we did ride the wave, of course. There's no doubt about that. But that's the same with a lot of businesses that grow, .com growth, all of these things. You need to be in the right place. Was there a time? No, I think that we always said that we wanted to hit the seven figures, which is a vanity metric. There was one call where we were on, and I don't know what it was, and our head of ops, future head of ops, you could tell the way she was looking at us when it was like, this was the first time she actually thought we really meant this. And we're like, yeah, we're going to do seven figures this year. And I don't know what it was. It's just a real shift in conviction. And from there, we loaded into a new coaching program. We actually started making a big shift in income like in the months before we started it. So we were already like on a drive. We were almost preparing ourselves to start, and we had told them we're just going to start in a month. And we had a big growth month that month, and then we joined these guys, and that was really good for us. And it was just that period of just a big amount of growth. It did go sort of here, up here, and then up a lot.
Momentum. Obviously, you've clearly then evolved over those chapters from obviously PT, mentor, into leading a team. Now you're back into something a little bit leaner with a bit more purpose. So if we sort of reflect on where you are today and you've created a behavior change coaching program, what's the idea behind that and who's it sort of designed for?
I am now a business owner who has a business which is much leaner. I don't think that's unusual in the coaching space. It's definitely more competitive than it was over COVID, no doubt, for said reasons. Me and my business partner don't work together. So the realizations for me are going from a business where there's like 20 hands on deck to going where there's two. It is a sort of refreshing review to what it was like 8 years ago. I'm not saying I would never build another business with a team. There's certainly things I would do differently. I may do, but also I don't know if I'm not desperate to quite yet. I think the vanity thing is something that we do. You know, you want to build a big business, and perhaps maybe because we were driven towards, it wasn't just vanity, by the way. Having a driver of which is growth is a good thing. Growth is good in a business. So it's not like I just look at it like, oh, it was a terrible decision. I think it was the right decision at the time. So maybe if I build another business, I definitely wouldn't get to that many people. Definitely wouldn't get to that many people. It would be smaller, leaner. I would say that one of the differences is the kind of people that I work with. All of my clients now are over 35. They've been in the industry for at least 5 years. And what we were doing when we had the IOFBC is we were teaching a lot of people around what mindset and behavior change coaching was. I'd say from the ground up. What I realized is that there are the best trainers that I knew or that I see that are in the industry right now. They already know some of this. They're already probably doing it with their clients. They either don't know they're doing it and they're not getting paid for it. They know some of what I might talk about, stages of change, like value stuff, limiting beliefs, self-sabotage. They might know some of this conceptually, but they don't have a system to be able to actually know what to do when you've got a client. So a little bit of a pivot was, instead of sort of taking people from scratch and not really knowing what this stuff was, and then teaching them all this and teaching them the business. Most of my clients now, when they start, they already know a little bit of that stuff. They're already doing it with their clients in person. It's just very ad hoc. There's no structure to it. You know, if I try to get them to explain to me, well, how do you do it? They would have no clue, but they're like, oh, no, I know what I do that with my clients. So obviously they're a bit older. They've been in the industry longer. When I worked with lots of younger people, you would get some absolute superstars. And like, I was super impressed by someone who comes in and they're 22 and they're just already been in business for 4 years. And I'm like, geez, I was a fuck up at that age. Like, really. And I'm like, I'm so impressed. And some of them would do really well, but not all of them. And a lot of them, it was just too much. What I also found, everyone wants the rich clients until they get in front of the rich prospects and they shit themselves, because now they have to sell to someone who's a 40-year-old and who runs a business, and they're a 22-year-old and they haven't even lived a life. And some of them could just deal with it. We're just like, yep, Others crumbled. I had a call once and it was like, Tim, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And I was like, what's going on? It's like this really, like one of the more well-known people in Dublin, he wants to talk to me about my program. And I was like, yeah, okay. He's like, well, what do I do? And I was like, you do the same thing you do every single time we do this. What are you talking about? Now I knew what he really meant. I just was coaching him around it. He's like, yeah, but, and I was like, what's the, and then I explained to him, I was like, here's what's really going on. You're now getting what you wanted, but you're also going to get things that you didn't want, which is pressure, which is you're going to be on a call with him. He's going to ask you all sorts of questions and you don't know how to answer them. When someone's at least sort of a bit more experienced in life, but also their craft, they tend not to have that as much. They still do. So the guys that I work with now are probably a little bit further along than some of the newbies. Again, I really liked working with young guys because I wish I'd been a bit more like that, to be honest. But it was a bit more, I wouldn't say sink or swim, but some of them just couldn't handle it. And by the way, maybe some of them do. They've just taken them a few years to get to a point where they have built that confidence in their own life and journey and business that now they're just doing. I mean, there's definitely like a couple of the guys that we worked with back then are just doing unbelievably good stuff.
And it's again a little bit about timing then as well. Having, if they're 22, 23, they might be very high on their emotional intelligence and be able to connect and have that, where some people are a little bit of a late bloomer perhaps as well. But we've mentioned behavior change coaching. What is that in simple terms for somebody who's never heard that before?
It's actually what is actually happening. I would look at like the person can feel like motivated, they can say all the right things, etc. But it's like, what are their actual behaviors and what are they doing in the world? So we've all had clients where they say they want to lose weight, they come to us, and then every other session you're like, how did you get on? And they're like, oh yeah, I didn't do it. Now, me as a personal trainer would have been like, oh, excuses, blah, 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 all of that stuff. But the reality is their behaviors are like this. And I need to figure out, well, what behaviors do I want them to have? By the way, do I want them to have, but should they also want to have? So we need to figure out that stuff. A lot of it is a bit more, what I've tried to do or what I've done now is it's definitely more of a systematic approach. So instead of spending like 3 months learning this stuff, I get people that already understand it, and we've got a much more systematic way that we can just plug it into people's business. Obviously, we have to show them how to run the 12-week behavior change blueprint. Each week they do what I call like a coaching model. And so it's I wouldn't call it homework, but it's a structure of do you know what a growth model is?
Yes.
Yeah. So in therapy, it's kind of, it's like where you now, where do you want to get to and what's the roadblocks? It's like they're the 3 things that we break down in the first sort of month. So we get the client to do a worksheet on who they are now, what their behaviors are, what they actually do in the world, not what they say they want to do, what they actually do and how they behave. We look back a little bit with that. Again, it's just a questionnaire. Then you turn it over and you write a little character description. And it's like, how did you used to eat? How did you eat when you were growing up? We're not going too far into that stuff, but we just want to know. And then the next week we do, right, the version of you that is the version that well, they don't quite look at it like this, but the version of you that is 20 pound lighter and has, what behaviors do they have? One of the questions that I think is really useful at this point is, how would that version of you eat? And now I'd say that's probably been used. I know if you include people that have used our free stuff, we're talking like tens of thousands of end users. And I've not seen all of them answers, by the way, but the hundreds of answers I've seen, I've never ever seen anything but healthy, like fresh, local, green, lean. Sometimes it's like, I'd like to be able to have a treat when I want without feeling guilty, all of that stuff. No one's ever written, I want to be eating donuts and pizza every day, which is the reality that they are often doing. And that's just a microcosm of one question, but we ask other questions and then we get them to write a character's description of who they want to be. And it's not just who they want to be, it's what are the behaviors of the person that they want to be. And that's a good example of like the way that we structure the program. Obviously, they still get the training and stuff around that, but it makes a big difference when you're working with someone that you can have a structured, systematic way of thinking about things. Like there's other coaching models like self-sabotage, limiting beliefs. We want to know what someone's limiting beliefs are. We need to have a systematic way to both pull them out, but get the client to understand that and then come up with a system. The client comes up with the solution to all of those limiting beliefs, whether they're true or not. If they are true, then fine. But what do we do to overcome that? yeah, that's kind of an overview of how I look at it anyway.
It's like an iceberg, the tip of everything, and then there's a lot of depth underneath to explore to see
Always.
where they're going, isn't it, really?
Always, and with some people it's just a real, literally just those two documents. If anyone's watching and they want to do some online coaching and they want to come and pay me, like, just listen to what I just said and somehow try and reproduce that. And if you just did those two questionnaires, you can call them whatever you want to call them, with a client at the beginning of your program, you have bookends. You have where the person is now and how they're acting and how they think and their behaviors and their habits. But it's not just, well, I want to change habits. Like, yeah, but we need to know where you want to go. We need a destination before we do the GPS. And that is a real powerful tool for people to write down. This is not only like what I want to do. I want to be 20 pounds over, like less weight. Yeah, of course you do. We know that. But what behaviors does that version of you live to? And then, by the way, the trick is we then need to figure out, how do we change your beliefs and your behaviors and your identity to this? And for some people it's very simple, other people it's challenging. Like, it is challenging, this stuff, sometimes for clients. Sometimes people get a little bit of depth, they realize, and again, we're not psychologists. We're not, we're not dietitians. We don't have to be, because we're just asking some questions about, well, what could we do to get you closer to that? So sometimes it gets a bit of depth when they realize, like, why they're eating like they're eating. Maybe it's stress, maybe it's emotions and stuff. And then it's just like, what could we do this week to move you further towards that?
Yeah. And what's a couple of the transformations or client stories that have really stuck with you recently, the kind that reminds you of why you love the
My
work
own
that you do?
clients or
Yeah,
my
yeah, your
clients?
own clients. Yeah, your own clients. Yeah.
I liked the old days where we worked with some of these younger guys. I really did, because I think that I wish I had been a bit more like them. There's a couple of our guys that were here a few years ago and they're doing fantastic stuff, and they've kind of bridged a little bit more into performance. Now, not all of our clients want to do that, but I've got some clients that are doing fantastic stuff in the Middle East. They're doing really, really well, and they're like 20, 29, 30, 31, 32. They're having like kids and family. And I'm like, we were only a little bit of a sort of cog in that. But the difference between when they found us, which was, I loved working in the gym, don't get me wrong, but it's not, for some people, it's not a long-term career on its own. I like when people get it. And what normally happens is they have to trust us, me and my system. And they're like, trust the system, trust the system. I'm like, all right, that's the first part. But I also want them to learn to trust themselves. Trust the system is externalizing that trust, which is what they pay me for. What often happens when they stop telling their clients what to do and actually start moving towards a sort of asking their clients what they would like to do, which for most personal trainers is not normal, and then start getting feedback about halfway through the first clients that they bring on. And they start getting feedback from their own clients like, I'm struggling to understand why this used to be so hard. This sort of almost seems too easy. Like, it doesn't make sense to them. And then my clients are like, okay, now I see, because they have to just trust me before that. Now they're getting feedback from their clients and they're like, shit, I can impact this person's life by speaking to them for 30 minutes a week. As long as I know what to be doing in those calls, and of course, some of the systems that we give them, that's always a really good, when they get it. I've got a couple of clients at the moment that have just, one thing that I sometimes find is that I get clients that are like, Tim, I've already been doing this with clients. They just never really took it on board, or I didn't know it was a thing even. I just did it naturally. I've got one client at the moment who said that to me this week. And now we're like, okay, now you're going to start getting paid for it. Like, she's only selling it like £1,500, but like she's got it quite quickly, and she's like, now I'm going to start getting paid for it. I think that, the best personal trainers, in London, you can have some people that take the piss like I did, but you're talking like £100 an hour is probably about normal. Like, those same people, when they get clients that will pay them 2.5 grand for this, I think there's absolute value in that. Like, you do a proper you really actually change something in the person. It's not just going to work out with someone for 3 months.
And I suppose that's changing your intentions, or changing their intentions from hiding behind something of going, I have a personal trainer that can meet me in the gym 3 times a week and we do this cool, fun stuff, to I'm actually empowering myself and trusting the process.
I'd agree. And like, I think there's a lot of people that do that. They have a personal trainer, either it's rent a friend, get me out. Again, I'm not denigrating that. I think my client who had 2 hedge funds, probably worth every penny that he paid me to come and work out for half an hour, but that's not always the norm. I would say as well, I'll flip it, is that online coaching in the way that I believe it should be done is also a challenge, because you won't get in a situation where you've got a client for 3 years and you're just doing the status quo and everyone's pretending and no one's really doing anything. And it's just like that conveyor belt. When someone pays you for a fixed period of time, for a fixed outcome, which is what we're doing, marketers will tell you this, sell the outcome, sell the result. We've sold the outcome and the result, which also means that we would want to then deliver on that. So this was one of the reasons I liked it so much, is because I wouldn't say it was not about the pressure, it's about the interest, because I found it interesting again. I got bored out of my mind with personal training. Like, it was just unfulfilling. Again, I really liked my clients, by the way. I'm not saying I didn't. I liked most of them anyway, but apart from some of them, but I found this something like, I think, like you obviously got it with fast, like with the faster stuff, and then the other. I managed to fix one person once, and I think it was just like a broken clock is right twice a day. And she couldn't run, and she was my girlfriend's client at the time. And my girlfriend was like, "Can you do some of that stuff on her?" And I was like, "Well, I didn't really know what I was doing. I was just fumbling around with my foot." And then I did something, and it went click, and I was like, oh. And then she got on the treadmill, and she was like, she hadn't been able to run without pain for like 6 years, and she ran on the treadmill for the first time, and I was like. By the way, I knew I didn't really know what I was doing, so I didn't feel like I'm good. I pretended I did. But that was kind of like, when I think you understand how the body works and you can get the solution to it, feels good. I never got that because I just knew it was just luck. Whereas with the coaching, I was like, okay, I can figure some shit out here. And if I couldn't, I was like, what am I missing? What could I do differently? So for me personally, that was really rewarding, and obviously financially as well. But for a lot of my clients, I think that's the same way they think.
Yeah.
But it is pressure. It's not pressurized, but it is, it's a harder job, I would say.
Yeah, I suppose there's a lot more, less luck. There's more of a structure, a purpose behind it, more intention behind it,
For sure.
more
100% those
depth
last two, yeah.
behind it. Which is good. And you've obviously built something here that blends skills, expertise, and obviously probably wisdom behind it. So before we wrap up, let's just sort of step back and see what business has sort of taught you over the years. Looking back, what do you think has been some of the toughest challenges you've perhaps had to navigate, either personally or professionally? And what did that sort of teach you?
How far are we going back?
As far as you like, as short as you like. It can be 12 months, it can be 12 years.
I think a lot of this there's a Steve Jobs video I think it's a Stanford commencement speech, and he talks about connecting the dots backwards. I actually went for counselling when I was 19. By the way, I'm 48, so we're talking 30 years ago. Like, this was not like now where everyone goes and gets therapy. This was back in the 90s where, you know, I told one of my friends, put it that way. I didn't have a particularly healthy late teenage years, and got myself in a bit of a pickle, and ended up not feeling very good, anxiety, depression kind of stuff. And then I ended up I was in such a state that I actually ended up going and the only reason I did it is because I actually didn't know what else to do. I wasn't worried. I wasn't going to like top myself or anything like that, but it was just not good. I was drinking loads to be able to deal with the way I was feeling. And then I had like panic attacks. If you start drinking loads, you're not doing yourself. I wasn't training. I didn't take care of myself, etc. And then out of desperation, I ended up I think when I was really drunk one night, I called the Samaritans. They weren't particularly helpful, I don't think. But I went and got therapy. But now at the time, it was just like a youth charity. Went to the doctors. They said, you should go to this place. Gave me some medication and that. Took one of the medications, not the other. But the therapy was what I think helped. Counseling, I would have called it at the time. And I think that when I eventually got my first ever like life coaching and business coaching, I just realized how important it was to not ask for help in the sort of wet wipe way, but actually how proactive and the difference it will make in someone's business and life. Like, I believe in mentoring. I believe in mentorship. Like, when I want to improve something about myself, whether it's in work or outside of work, I'm like, right, I'm going to go and do this thing. Like, I'm going to go and find someone who knows what to do. And if I have to pay them money, you know what? So what? Good. In fact, good. I should be doing that. So that was very, very difficult at the time. 10 years later, 15 years later, maybe it just made me realize it was much easier I got a life coach when I had a big business opportunity, and there was a few gremlins in my head still. Like, I remember it was a really big business opportunity. I was like, I'm out of my depth here. Like, and by the way, this was 12 years ago, very different now than I was then, because I didn't have any skills around business and organization and all of that stuff. And I went and got a coach, a life coach, and it was very, very useful. And then I wasn't consciously doing this until I realized, maybe like 3 asking for helps in. When I got Glenn, I was like, shit, I never would have done that on my own. I never would have been able to achieve what I'd achieved with Glenn over those 2.5 years. And maybe I look back at the fact that I had to go and get some help. And, it's different, obviously, but I think there's a lot of correlations between having someone to be in that. It was just having someone to talk to. Again, like, I look back and it's like, what did he do? Just ask me questions, helped me realize what I could do to help myself get out of this situation, helped me actually understand what the real problem is, as opposed to what I think it might be. So I've always valued getting help, asking for coaching, having coaching. I think that a lot of the narrative around sort of business coaching or this stuff would be like, you shouldn't be too proud to ask for it. I think that's kind of past. I don't think people are in that moment now. I think more of it now is actually they're worried that they're going to have a bad experience with coaches because maybe they have, or mentors. Probably much more about that than I should be able to do it on my own kind of thing. So that was big. Resilience, I learned a lot from my ex-business partner for sure. Like, at that time I said that we had that big opportunity. The old me probably would have just given up. And it was quite noticeable. Like, the first thing that came out of his mouth was like, right, what are we going to do that's different? This was 2 years in, and what we thought was a big high. Learned a lot from that about resilience. And I'll bring it back to something I said earlier. Like, business is hard. Like, it's not easy. And it's the wrong idea that maybe some people aren't set up or designed to have a business. Maybe the reality is they are better off having a job. And sometimes, no, in fact, that's not true. Sometimes I never wish I had a job, but sometimes I wish I could have the ability to switch off at the weekends, like someone who has a job might be able to do.
Yeah, I ponder that
Resilient.
sometimes of what that would be like. And then I think I'd probably be quite bored. Having an active mind, solving problems, coming up with solutions, pondering how that could work, bit of reflection, sort of keeps you driven, keeps you driving, have a purpose. I don't think I could ever have sort of a 9 to 5 and clock off and just think, right, I'll sit down and watch Emmerdale, Coronation Street, EastEnders, and then some rubbish or whatever people watch these days.
How controversial can I get?
As controversial as you like to get.
I'm just going to talk to men. I don't think this isn't the case with women, for sure. But I think, as we're both men and we're having this conversation and we're talking about me and you and our situation, because you just fed it back. There's a story about in the Second World War, they had obviously a lack of people. Men were going and fighting the war. And they had the home guard, obviously, so people that were older would be doing jobs like that. They needed more people to do home guard type jobs. I'm probably butchering this story, but this is the gist. And so they got people that were in what they would have then coined like asylums. And there was obviously many more men are in asylums than women for whatever reason. And they gave them stuff and work and jobs and responsibilities to go and do. And what they realized by giving them these jobs and responsibilities and meaning and purpose and a goal that you did together, that a lot of these guys got a lot better. Now, back in the day, in the 40s, those people would have just been in that place forever. That's generally how they dealt with these situations. They didn't try and I think that we have and by the way, this is everyone, but I think we have a optimal amount of stress that actually leads to some level of contentness. I don't think it's happiness. I think that's the wrong way of looking at it. If we're trying to maximize for happiness, I think we're in problems. It's like contentness, I think, is a better way of looking at it. And it's a optimal amount, and the optimal amount is not 0. The optimal amount is definitely not too much, but it's just too much that what you think you can handle. And I think for me personally, without having something that I feel like I'm directly responsible for, something that I feel like is me, I'm not saying I wouldn't feel like that in a job. I probably would. never had a job, so I don't know. But for me, I always like the idea of there is a direct correlation that's much stronger of what I put in is what I get out. Now, the downside of that is when things aren't going well and when you don't feel great about business, it can suck because there's no hiding. We had a year where the business, not personally, but the business lost money. It's like that was unthinkable. Like, and as a personal trainer, you would not understand that. How can a business, how do you lose money? Well, the business lost money. We still took out, but the business lost money. It's like, well, especially after you've had some big highs, that's not the best thing because we were trying to do different things and we were investing and stuff like that. So the roller coaster is much bigger, but I do think that the rewards are much, much greater.
And it's not necessarily just a financial reward. There's seeing the clients, seeing the progress, seeing their impact they can have as well. And with there, as we've discussed already, with so many online coaching in the world or online coaches in the world, what's one thing that really needs to be cleared up once and for all, do you think, in this space?
If we're talking online fitness coaching, I'm not sure if it's still a misconception. I think it's less so than it used to be. I think people used to just think that what online coaching was take what you do in the gym and just do the same thing online, which was mostly just give someone workouts. Now, some trainers would do the sort of more and more do the nutrition stuff, right? But the benefit of in-person personal training is the physicality, the ability to look at people and correct form, etc. You teach them to a higher level of movement and exercise and stuff, you can make sure they're doing it correctly and all of that stuff. Then what a lot of people did when I first started is they literally just took that and tried to put it online. But obviously then they can't put you in person. So they just give open an app and there's some workouts. That's not that bad. By the way, AI is absolutely destroying that anyway, because AI can do it better than as good as a personal trainer can anyway now. And apparently seem to do the form feedback as well. So I think that if it hasn't been understood, that especially with high ticket, but to be honest, with any sort of online coaching, the magic is the fact that you can give someone a system, program, service that actually solves all of the pillars in, if we say weight loss, I don't just mean weight loss, I mean weight loss, transformation, stress, wellness, well-being, all of these things, which is what a lot of people want to do when they do online. Like personal training or fitness is just one of the pillars. If someone just wants to get fitter, now we don't know what that means, but let's say they just want to get stronger, as long as they don't break themselves, they can just do it in a gym. But it's not normally the only thing that people want. They want all of the mindset, the lifestyle, all of it. And that's actually a much better system to deliver online. So I think it's the understanding that online is not just and I think it's gone. It used to be that online was a cheaper version of personal training. I think for a lot of people, they realize that's not true. For me, it's much better. It's much, much better if what your goals are to support people through weight loss, health, lifestyle transformation. Doing it online is actually better than doing it in the gym. And then it means you should charge more.
Yeah. And the value's there as well. And finally, what's next for you? Any big goals, any changes? What are you excited about for the next chapter for you?
Keep growing the business that I'm doing at the moment. I'm enjoying working with the people that I'm working with. I'm enjoying they already have in-person businesses and they don't want to throw it away. They don't want to go and move to Dubai. They don't want to, be on the laptop 14 hours a day. I'm enjoying creating a lot more of a systematic approach than perhaps we used to. Our guys had a lot of time in the day to make sales, to be in inboxes, to do all of this stuff, to put loads of content out. So we're having to definitely take a much more systematic approach. I like the new clients we're working with because they're already a little bit there. Most of my clients now, probably about 85% of what they actually need to be successful online, they've already got. Back in the day, I'd say it's probably like 50%. So my job is to just give them the little bits that they need to. An example would be sales. Like they already sell, they already close most people that sit in front of them. But what they don't know how to do is to sort of overcome an objection like, well, I want to just go and get a personal trainer, or I need to think all of these kind of stuff. So I'm really enjoying the clients I'm working with at the moment. I do want to grow the business. Probably not to the size it was before, and certainly not with 20 staff. Probably going to move abroad again at some point as well, which I'm looking forward to.
And if somebody wants to work with you, where's the best place to reach out to you?
Well, this will be on LinkedIn, so they can LinkedIn me.
LinkedIn.
Facebook, I'm on as well.
Brilliant. I'll add those in the show notes. But Tim, you've walked away from a vision of success that didn't fit and built one that did. Your story reminds us that success isn't something you stumble into, it's something you build, one honest decision at a time. It's been inspiring hearing your journey, and thanks for being part of 360 Life Stories.
Thank you, man.